Good evening, everyone. I understand before we begin the meeting that there's a swap for the chair and vice chair roles. So I believe the idea is that Mark will now become the chair and Noor will be taking the vice chair role. I think I have that correct. Awesome, thank you. If I could just get a motion to that effect, that would be great. Moved by Fiona, seconded by Councillor Kim. Any questions or comments to the matter? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? That carries. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mark to chair the rest of the meeting.
Thank you very much, Mike. The time is 7:03 p.m. on Wednesday, June 16th, 2021. I'd like to call the Anti-Black Racism and Anti-Racism Task Force meeting to order. This meeting will be held electronically as per Section 19, Section 1 of the town's procedural bylaw number 6228-19, as amended due to the COVID-19 situation. May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by May and approved by, sorry, I didn't see an approval.
I think Fiona raised her hand.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on the agenda? I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay. May I please have a motion to receive the meeting minutes of April 21st, 2021? Moved by Noor and seconded by May. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes? I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. We have no delegations this evening. Now there are matters for consideration. Starting with the memorandum from Sport and Community Development Specialist regarding cultural diversity in sport. We have a presentation from Erin Hamilton. Is Erin on the line?
Good evening, I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you, Erin. You have 10 minutes.
Excellent. I'm just going to share my screen here and confirm that you can see it and you can hear me okay before I jump right into the presentation. Is everybody able to hear me okay and see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for confirming. So thank you so much and good evening to all members of the Anti-Black Racism and Anti-Racism Task Force. Thank you for having me this evening to share information and seek input into work related to the Aurora Sport Plan. In 2016, Town Council approved a sport plan that outlined 22 recommendations with an overall goal to increase participation in sport through the provision of a safe, supportive, and inclusive sport environment. The 22 recommendations focus on various areas of sport that will help contribute to the overall goal of the sport plan. As a sport and community development specialist, my current focus is on 8 of those recommendations, but the numbers are growing and shifting as time passes. Tonight, I'm here to speak with you specifically about the following recommendation within the sport plan: to train staff and volunteers in working with culturally diverse groups to better understand their sport needs, and to look to other communities within the region that have responded to changing demographics by providing both culturally appropriate sports and an introduction to traditional Canadian sports. In order to achieve these recommendations, and based on these recommendations, we have the objectives to do the following: that sport provides a welcome and safe space for diverse members of our community to participate. We want to increase participation of culturally diverse groups in sport and physical activity within community sport. As well, we want to achieve an increase in the number of individuals across the community that are holding sport leadership roles, such as coaches, board members, and officials within sport. In order to better understand these objectives, it is important to understand a few things first. We can't make assumptions, and we need to engage with the community. So we need to hear about the experiences of culturally diverse community members in sport. For those that have been participating, what have their experiences been? Have they been positive? Have they been engaging? Have they felt safe? Have they felt engaged? Are there additional sport offerings of interest that are not currently available in the community? Are there barriers to the current sport structure that is preventing participation and registration? And are the sport offerings that are available reaching culturally diverse community members through communication efforts? This includes both the avenues in which we're communicating the information out, such as social media, but as well as the messaging, the images. Are they reaching the community and connecting with the community? We have a variety of different methods to achieve this goal that we've identified. We can run focus groups. We can conduct surveys. There's been research done of best practices across Canada. There's been a review of resources through Sport for Life and Canadian Women in Sport. As well, we've provided presentations and we seek feedback from local social networks and organizations and clubs. To date, the following work and engagement has taken place. So we've reviewed a variety of resources. As an example, the Canadian Women in Sport put out a resource specifically to working with newcomer women and their sport experiences. We've done research and engaged with organizations across Canada about the work they've done to engage culturally diverse groups. We've conducted presentations and to staff and clients at the Welcome Center, Immigrant Services, as well as holding information tables that we've set up in the facility. This was prior to COVID, and we haven't had the opportunity to do so since. Immediately prior to our lockdown, we'd done a presentation to the Alabrar Muslim Association on the opportunities within town to participate in sport, but also to hear their feedback of their sport and physical activity wants and needs and their barriers to participation. Based on the work to this point, some of the consistent messages we're receiving include the need for female-only programming, and in some cases, the requirement to have complete privacy within the space they're participating. Participants need to see themselves in the leaders of the programs. So that goes back to my earlier point of looking at our leadership within sport. Is it representative of our community? Identify those that are not participating in sport and community programs and work with them to co-create a program to meet their needs. Delivering simultaneous programming for mothers and children to participate at the same time in separate spaces. We need to provide training for our sport leaders on working with newcomers in the community. And understand that the current sport delivery system and model does not always provide a welcome space for all members of our community. This can range from uniform requirements to the lack of acknowledgement of holidays being celebrated and making adjustments to sport schedules to accommodate. The need to provide sport opportunities that serve identified cultural groups, and in some cases to participate in their own space with other members of their community, cultural group, or to participate with all members of the community. In order to be successful, it's critical that we continue to connect and expand our reach in the community to community members and organizations within the community that serve culturally diverse groups. There's a lot of work to be done across Canada and Ontario and within our community alone to achieve this goal. So at this time, I welcome any questions or an opportunity to provide comments on the work that's been done to date, or to share thoughts or ideas on how we can expand our reach in the community to ensure we're hearing from all members and we're doing a proper evaluation of our sports system and sport offerings in the community. So that's my presentation. I can open it up to the floor.
I do have a question. I'm not sure you said like specific sports like in general, but like what would you do to like help like say like tennis or golf become like more diverse? Like how would you make like get away the barriers that exist there for somebody who like me or somebody else who would want to play like tennis but can't really afford it because like the tennis club or like golf can't really do that because they're not like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, great question. So I think one of the key things that we need to ensure we understand is what is the barrier. Oh, sorry, Mark, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I did. And my apologies, maybe my mic was on, but I did not get a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion. Is there a mover and a seconder? Moved by Harold and seconded by Nora. Thank you. My apologies. I'm sorry, continue.
Excellent. So I will, just to go back to your question. So I think what's critical is to ensure we are expanding our reach. One of the things we want to do is look at how we can expand our reach in the community to ensure we have a proper handle on what the barriers are. So when you identified specifically tennis and golf, for us to work to address sort of potential barriers, it's having an understanding of those barriers and looking at opportunities to break down those barriers. So whether it's a matter of, you made reference, whether it's the cost associated with it. So we're looking at opportunities for grants as an example, or creating new initiatives and how can we get funding sources to offset. There are a variety of funding sources to support participation in sport. As an example, Sport Aurora has their All Kids Can Play program. There's Canadian Tire Jumpstart through the town. There's subsidy programs. So it's a matter of making those connections once we know the barriers. And so one of the things that we want to achieve is sort of a more diverse outreach within the community to ensure we have a full understanding of where the barriers are. And that can range from transportation to not feeling comfortable in the space that they're in. They don't have leaders that they can identify with within the sport. So some of the things, as an example, is how do we engage more individuals across our community to become leaders and train them and host coaching certifications specifically for individuals in the community, culturally diverse individuals in the community, to support them stepping into leadership roles and running programs for them to be able to do so. I know in many cases across sport, not having somebody they can identify with, a leader within the community, to be able to identify and participate in a sport program is definitely a huge barrier across Canada and Ontario, and one that we're looking to try to address. So one of the first things we really want to make sure we achieve is, again, having a true understanding of what those barriers are, and work through those barriers to help achieve and support the engagement of more individuals into sports where they're interested.
Excellent. Are there any other questions?
Yes, please. May I?
Go ahead.
Thanks. Thank you, Erin, for the presentation. Quick question for you. You had mentioned in the beginning of the presentation that there is probably with the information that you are receiving as you go, that you probably will look into introducing some cultural sports. I'm just curious, how do you go about choosing cultural sports, and where would this be introduced? Is this introduced at a school level? Is this introduced through the town? How is this introduced?
So right now, definitely we want to understand where the gaps are. We have yet to receive any direct information identifying if there's sports that are of interest that have yet to be offered. And so if there is, through our research and hearing from communities, and then I think our first avenue would be as a town, as a municipality. If there's not an existing sport club in the community, the municipality itself would look to see if we can provide that sport through our community programs team. And so adding those offerings. But again, even at that, there's a lot of other pieces we would want to look at to align with that. So what are the sport offerings? And then when we are offering them, making sure people are adequately trained. We have a diverse group of leaders to be able to lead the program that are knowledgeable in that sport. So it would be working with our community programs team. But the other option too is if there's enough interest within the community, there's always opportunities to start new local nonprofit sport organizations within the community. And we could support and work directly with community members to start a local sport organization to launch new sports. So those would be the two primary avenues we would look at if it came to our attention that there was a particular sport that was of interest that wasn't currently being offered in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Nor?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Aaron, for that presentation. I thought that a lot of those points were really great and they really resonated with me. One thing that I just wanted to comment on was, I think it was included in your presentation. I guess I just want to put an emphasis on the point about making sports a safe space for people to participate in. I think, all of the other points that you mentioned are extremely important. But if we're not making sure that people feel safe and they feel comfortable and they're treated respectfully within that space, then it makes it very difficult to kind of continue that participation a lot of the times, which is unfortunately something that I've seen within, the kind of sports community. And I think the difficult thing is that it also goes beyond just our township because, a lot of the time, depending on kind of what league you're playing in, you might be going to tournaments that are, outside of the municipality, and you're interacting with a lot of other people too, which you obviously can't control necessarily, but I think we should really emphasize, I guess, creating a culture that is anti-racist within the town of Aurora sports at the very least, which I know can also be probably a little bit difficult because of like the voluntary nature of a lot of the sports. Well, I guess I can't speak to all of the different sports. I'm coming from the perspective of like house league soccer. But I know that, coaches are doing it on a voluntary basis. So there's a lot of things I'm sure that you have to kind of consider in how that's done, whether that's, providing anti-racism training. But I do think that it has to go kind of beyond that and making sure that at all levels, not just like the coaches and the officials, but also the other teammates and participants and families and people who are involved within like that circle of sports, are all contributing to a positive culture and a positive experience for everybody who's participating.
And I appreciate you emphasizing that. And I would welcome as well, just in regards to that, if there's any recommendations or anybody within this task force is familiar with approaches within the sport community or even outside of the sport community, where steps have been taken to ensure that a safe space exists. So whether that ranges from some of the things that we're looking at is, again, training, and that would include training for coaches, training for administrators. Do we need to look at training for parents within, and again, or athletes themselves, and that education and awareness? And I think you're correct. Sport travels, they move, but at the very least, if within the environment and their team and their sport community that they participate in Aurora, they feel safe in that space, that when they go with them to places, they know that they have a community that's going to support them, whatever is going to happen. And so I think I would welcome feedback if anybody has any or have any suggestions of things that they've seen. As an example of one of the things I'm currently looking at specific to newcomers in the community, and that's not going to cover all the training needs in terms of cultural diversity, but there's a Winnipeg Newcomer Sport Academy, and they recently launched a training workshop for coaches and administrators in their local sport community on how to work with newcomers and make them feel safe and what's required. And it was delivered by newcomers in partnership with newcomers in the community. So delivering that message, and it was a requirement among some of the sport organizations for their coaches to participate in the training in order to deliver sport. It was one step, but there's a lot of things that need to be done. So I appreciate those comments, and I definitely taken note as to something we really need to emphasize, because there's so many factors and so many pieces to the sport puzzle in terms of who you're engaging with as a participant. And so ensuring that all of those individuals that you are engaging with have adequate information, training, and resources and communication. And when situations do happen, our sport organizations have adequate policies and procedures in place. I think that's the other piece, that things happen within the sport community, but sometimes it's a matter of how an organization addresses the things that happen in the sport community to ensure that individuals recognize that they're backed by the organization, and they're going to be supported in that avenue. And so another area to go along with that is your policies, and then your staff or your committees and your volunteers to support those policies that you have in place. So we are doing some work with Sport Law and Strategy Group on policy development within our sport organizations, because as you mentioned, a lot are volunteer driven. And so we need to bring resources to them and support them in that avenue. So I appreciate those comments and welcome as we work through this project, if anybody has anything to share in that regard, based on your experiences and knowledge to bring to the table.
I'll briefly offer my comments, but my daughter started in Aurora with the York North Basketball Association at the age of 5, and she played with various clubs up to now, and high school teams as well. Ontario Basketball has a long-term athletic development program, which speaks to a lot of the points that you mentioned earlier, including a focus on inclusion and on sportsmanship. And most of this team is aware that my daughter is going to be playing Ontario University OUA basketball. So certainly a success story in terms of starting early, not being forced too early into competition, and an environment that was inclusive and welcoming that allowed her to develop as an athlete. So it's been a positive experience.
Excellent. I appreciate you sharing that story, and we need to learn from those stories, and we need to make sure they're celebrated, and we need to ensure that people are familiar with those journeys and what made it a safe space for her to participate and move through the system as she was comfortable doing so. So I appreciate you sharing that, Mark.
Thank you. There's a question from me.
Thank you, Mark. Erin, quick thing. How about if you guys considered maybe piggybacking onto sports clubs that already have great code, conduct, rules of conduct, And piggybacking onto them, for instance, I coached for many years girls soccer, and I can see from Noor's point of having something, a safe place for just sort of a women's group or women's club where you feel comfortable, or for instance, women coming from countries where they feel more comfortable just playing with women, and maybe piggybacking that onto, for instance, Aurora Youth Soccer Club or the Hockey League. I can see like a great, basically working together with them to maybe put up, because they already have implemented their rules and they have great conduct rules. And so would that sort of work if you maybe implemented that with the groups that are already available?
Yeah, no, excellent. And resource sharing is definitely critical. And there's some great opportunities to continue to do so and build off of. One of the areas that I think we need to work on that aligns with what you said is, in many cases within sport, sport can work work in silos, and they're focused on their sport, and how do we do more to bring them together and resource share and support. So we currently have the Mayor's Roundtable of Sport that brings together sport organizations. It was sort of planned, and then the pandemic hit and it turned into a great resource where we were bringing sport groups together every 2 weeks or so in the immediate to sort of share stories and learn from one another as we all tried to navigate. But we need to continue to build off that momentum. And your example that you just shared, where there are a lot of great resources that exist out there, why recreate the wheel? And encourage and create a space. And some of the work we should be doing as town is really ensuring that we are driving that connection between sport clubs to share. So I appreciate that in terms of the resource sharing and what already exists, and how do we pass that on to other clubs in terms of conduct and best practices and learning. So I'll make note of that, because that can be an area of focus for one of our upcoming Mayor's Roundtable of Sports as well. In this area. So thank you, May.
Thank you. There's a question from Harold.
Thank you. I remember when I was in university, I love basketball, but I'm not very good at it. And going to play pickup at the gym, when I got on the court, I'd just run up and down the court. No one would ever pass the ball to me. So I spent a half hour running and no one passed the ball. And that was a repetitive pattern. And so I eventually gave up. But my wife says, just get over it, but it's for me, it's kind of like, okay, all these guys, believe that I'm a terrible player and I'm not a venue. So I haven't hit the basketball courts ever again, but I'm a big basketball fan. So what I'm getting at is, in terms of some of the objectives and the challenges you pose in the slides, like I know with, my son playing a couple of years in hockey, there's certain culture in hockey, a certain culture in certain sports. And, it's hard to, sorry. There's a certain culture that's, it's hard to overcome. Sorry, just give me a few seconds, please.
I'm just gonna sort of add in there with while Harold, you know what, it is difficult, and I kind of see that. My son played AA hockey for the Aurora Tigers, and a lot of the times, because of color, in a lot of towns that we played, there would be family, adults even, or even the kids, friends of the kids that would come up. He was a goalie, and they would come and bang on the glass and basically tell him that because of his color, this isn't a sport for people of color. And so I just think, as far as that goes, and from what Harold is leading to, I think that there should be a whole lot more training going, because coaches would not know how to deal with it. There were times where someone would have to stand outside the dressing room till my son got changed and left the arena. And we had experienced that many, many times where I had to go running down just to go and protect him. And parents had no idea. And because he was the only kid of color on the sports, we, especially in the smaller towns, up north or whatever, that's where we would see it. It was very prevalent. We would go, a lot of the smaller towns is where we would have it. So it was very difficult, and coaches really didn't know how to deal with that. So my husband and I would undertake the fact that, okay, we were his protection, his guards, his guardians. And I remember a town where I had to stand, because my husband was on the bench coaching. I had to stand at the door till my son was safely out. And even through that, as we were walking, there were things that were, name calling, monkey, whatever it was, till we got into the car. And again, parents stood by because they had no idea. It couldn't understand. And I feel Harold's pain, and I hear Harold's pain. And it is because your child is a certain way or a certain color. Now, I don't know how different it is. My son is 30 now, but I can tell you, we lived through a lot of harassment. Tournaments up, he played all over. We were in Halifax, we were in the US, in Rochester, we were all over the US, all over Canada. And that was very prevalent, that he was not welcome on the ice. Harold, you ready?
You're on mute, Harold.
Still muted.
Thank you, May. I guess where I'm getting at is, I was thinking, how can the town play a role in overcoming some of the challenges that you outlined in your slides? And I think when, and whether it's an organization or a sport or anything reaches a certain level, then it gives it some legitimacy. And so sports that are might be culturally unique, like for instance, like cricket is a huge sport in South Asia, South Africa, and my friends in the Caribbean, whether it be Barbados or they love cricket, but no one else really. It's not huge in Ontario necessarily. It's a niche thing, but I don't know the first thing about that. And rugby is another sport that's popular in Australia and Europe, but I don't know the first thing about that. But when it's spearheaded by the town or municipality or a large organization, it grants it legitimacy. So has there been thought, Aaron, to perhaps to engage some of the the other parts of the community that we have organized, that we organize, whether it be cricket or whether it be ping pong or badminton, because like the Asian community loves their racket sports as well. So has that been discussed at all at the staff level to maybe organize something like that? And I find sports, food, things where we can experience things together. That's where cultures, races can come together and really have a shared bond. So sports definitely has a play in race relations. So has that been discussed, and is that something that we as a town can promote and organize in the future?
Thanks, Councillor Kim. So to say formally discussed, no, there's been some discussions, and we do have sort of trying to expand our reach of some sport. There is a badminton club in the community, a private badminton club in the community. There's the cricket club just in King right next door. And so I think you bring a good point in terms of sort of engaging those sport organizations more in the work that we're doing and making them part of the work we're doing. And we could also learn from those sport organizations in terms of how they deliver their sport experience and environment that they create that makes that safe space. So I think you make a really great point that we need to be learning a bit more from sport clubs that are delivering to more diverse groups of individuals from the community. And obviously they're providing a space that makes individuals feel safe to participate and want to be there, but also the concept of some of the things we've talked a bit about is creating some multi-sport programs where individuals can try a multiple different sports. And please let me know if I'm going sort of off of some of your suggestions or questions about, can we sort of look at how we bring sort of some of those sports? You talked about hockey as an example with a badminton and have people sort of gathering in those spaces and maybe trying different sports and bringing different cultures together, or creating environments. Obviously, once we get through the pandemic in a time where the social element of sport can maybe create some type of gathering, like you talked about food and the social element is something we've talked a lot more about, and how important that is to acceptance within the sport community. A lot of house league programs don't provide that space. People come, they participate, they leave. So there's not a real chance to build a connection and learn about one another. And so we need to be doing more of that within sport, that we can learn and spend time together with others that we're there with. So I'm not sure if that addresses a bit. I'd like to take that away to say formally that we sort of have that concept or idea to help address the challenges we face around creating a space for individuals that feel safe. No, definitely not. But I've made note of it, Councillor Kim, to look into a bit more and address that. So I appreciate those comments for sure. I also want, if it's okay, I just also want to touch on May, when you were speaking there about the training, and I personally cannot comment, obviously, if things have gotten better, worse, stayed the same. You talked about that was 30 years ago. I can confirm for sure that that's not been eliminated from sport. Whether it's like gotten better in terms of the frequency of that happening, I can't confirm, but I can confirm that it hasn't been eliminated. And so how do we provide the training to even, I think there was one, we were talking about training to work with culturally diverse groups, but how do we provide training and tools for our administrators and our coaches to deal with those situations? So I took that note too, because I cannot guarantee that that's not still going to happen in the sport community, because we still hear of it. And so how do we provide the tools for coaches, like, so that parents don't, like, again, sports should not be a space where you feel like you have to protect your child. Should be, again, the intention is it's a safe space for them to be in. You can bring them there and you know it's where they want to be and they feel safe there and they can walk around and they're no concerns not to be treated in a way that's disrespectful and racist. And so how do we provide, I think, to add on, I think we need to, as a town, look at opportunities to provide training on dealing with those situations if they come up, but they can also come up within an own team. Like, it can come up across traveling to different teams, but even within your own team, if you encounter racist situations, how do you deal with those? How do you address them? How do you, as a club, and that goes back a bit to policies, but then within the policy, what should be written there and how do you actually deal with those situations? So I've also made note of that. I just wanted to sort of acknowledge that, May, in terms of that training of how to deal with the situations when they do come up. So again, you're communicating the importance of everybody on your team, and you value them, and they're important, and they should be treated all the same. And so I'm going to protect you and stand up for you as an individual that are part of the team.
Thank you. Just one quick added thank you. I would be 90 if that was 30 years ago. Sorry, Erin, you misunderstood.
That's okay.
My son is 30. So
your son is 30. I apologize. I probably
not too long
miscommunicated.
ago.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. But I think that's okay. But I look pretty good for 90. But but what my point being again is, I think this is a great resource for us to piggyback back onto, sports associations that are available, because they have already policies now, better policies on code of conduct. And I think Mark can kind of piggyback on that. But I think that's really crucial. And I think even though having those codes of conduct, what does not happen in sports is they might have the set rule. And Harold, you can even basically understand what I'm going from, but coaches are not trained to understand those rules. It's great to have it on paper, but it's basically they're not sitting in a room, going through, yes, you're going through all the rules of the sport, but I think what should begin with the rule of the sport should be the conduct rules within the sport of how someone is treated. How can you see if a player is running up and down and the ball's not being passed him? I think that's what we need to emphasize, and then that's what's important. And you brought another great point up, Erin. We've got a phenomenal resource in King City. 2 minutes, not even King, it's like part of Aurora, is the cricket club. That's where we host our national team, our Canadian cricket team, which I go sit and watch, and where they train and play. And we host international teams there. So why can't we piggyback off them with their resources and have our kids go to it? Again, when my son was in high school at Aurora High, they introduced cricket, but there were no coaches, nobody knew what this ball was. So he became the coach for a little while because of my love for cricket. But I think the important is a code of conduct, and coaches need to be basically trained as soon as they walk into any arena. So there's support for that person that's on playing the sport. And that's it. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you, May. If you could lower your hand, please, May. I had the unfortunate experience myself with a girls basketball team where we had a player who was caught using drugs at an away tournament, and as a result, her parent who was a coach resigned from the team, and I went through the process of becoming a coach with OBA. And one thing I'll state is that I certainly found that the Coaches Association of Canada has done a really, really good job of incorporating ethics training into the coaching curriculum, and having very clear guidelines on how coaches are supposed to handle ethical dilemmas when they come up, and being able to look back and see that the coach handled the situation exactly as was prescribed by the Coaches Association was absolutely eye-opening for me. Thank you.
That's good to know, and maybe it's something the town needs to look at hosting more of the coaching course on ethics in the community to ensure, because not all the coaches go through that. It's not mandatory for all sport organizations. And so bringing it to our community to ensure, as you said, the Coaches Association of Ontario is an excellent resource. And if there's can be some consistency, and we can look at that, and do we need to supplement? So thank you, Mark.
Excellent. Are there any other comments? Harold?
Yes, thanks, Mark. Just to wrap it up, Erin, unless anyone else has something to add. So in terms of action items, I know, every group, we have a lot of discussions, but we want something tangible and action focus for the next steps. So in terms of hopefully, you've gotten some good feedback from all of us, and some of the things that you wanted to talk about was how do we communicate to um, uh, these various groups of sports opportunities, and certainly, I'm sure all of us have suggestions that we can probably email you offline. You got a suggestion for me in terms of, I think to grant it legitimacy, if anybody just organizes, a cricket match or tournament or tutorial, it's not going to happen in any substantial way unless the town gets behind it and does an adequate communication and marketing behind it. So, that's a suggestion there that, I'd love to see something developed from that, whether it be rugby, cricket, any kind of ping pong, any racket sports, and also for seniors as well. I mean, for us, it's not just about race or college. It's all about other marginalized groups, like, whether it be seniors or accessibility challenged. And so those are the takeaways. But if there's any other actions that we can take, or if you're going to come back to us, is there a need for you to come back to us a next step in terms of, if you have an action plan and you want to come back to us, like, is there something that you had in mind, or?
So most definitely. So my intention was to sort of take what I heard from the group today, look at what we've done so far, and come up with a more detailed plan on how to move forward and progress, so I can bring that back to the committee as to how. I think it's important for us to, this is going to be an evolving project. Change is not going to happen overnight. This is going to take time, and it's going to be a journey that we go through. But I think it's critical that we take intentional steps that are going to create change, that are going to create a space for people to want to be engaged. And so one of the things that I want, so when you speak to sort of hearing from the group, I think the only other thing that I would, and I'm happy to receive information sort of one-on-one from people to email, is if there's organizations, social groups, individuals in the community that I could engage with, to hear directly from them as a community member about barriers, wants and needs, their experiences, because again, it's critical that we hear directly. One of the gaps that I say, for me, I've done some engagement with the community, but there's more that needs to be done to get a true handle on where we need to focus on. I've definitely taken some key notes. There's some initial steps, like I want to spend some time looking at training and policy development, where we look at the governance and the structure as a whole, and then start to narrow in on what other experiences can we be providing potentially that could welcome. So an example would be we're looking right now, partnering with sport organizations to deliver through the town female only sport programmings. So that's something we've heard, where it would be delivered by female leaders. We'd bring in some guest speakers that would come in, an opportunity to socialize. So there would be an opportunity to connect and build relationships that are in the program, but also participate in sport. The intention is engaging those that have never participated before. So those, again, would be initiatives that would align with some of the gaps and things that we've heard from culturally diverse groups about having female-only programming in space where nobody else is coming in except for females. So I think the takeaway, but then I'd like to come back to the group. Timelines, I probably look at sort of a late fall, early winter timeline where I come back, I can provide an update. As I continue to work through the project, there's going to be more in-depth questions and discussions I'd like to have with the group. So this was sort of an exploratory meeting. This is where we're at. I want to hear some initial responses from the group. Now I've taken that away, some really great comments shared with me tonight, to go and implement, do some more work to actually put some practices in place. And then we can start digging deeper into this topic and come back to you again with, here's what we've implemented. Here's some of the steps we've taken. Here's the next sort of phase we want to go into, and bring more detailed discussion points to your group to have and share and learn. I think that this task force can be an excellent resource for the work that we're doing in relation to the sport plan and addressing some of the gaps that we have here in the community.
Okay.
Thank you,
Great.
Aaron. I think Fiona had a question.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Aaron. That was well said and explained. Thank you for that. There was a few things I want to point out. It might go over to the next thing, but just because you mentioned it, I want to bring it up. If you asked that we as a town need to look into opportunity to solve this problem. And I think this is why one of the things that are on the agenda today is to look at our terms of reference as a task force and our function as a committee versus a task force, because this is exactly what we as a task force is here to do. One of the duties is to create education and foster and increase public awareness. And so that's a part of our planning. And so one of the things that we're supposed to work with community groups, and it would be probably like yourself, to make sure these training that we're talking about, that we are creating these opportunities through the town. So I would say the town is already doing something meaningful, because now there's a particular anti-racism and anti-Black task force here to look at these things, to really research, reach out to community, reach out to organization, and find out what are these things that we need to identify. So I appreciate that. And I think it would be already a great collaboration, because this is what we are supposed to be doing and focusing on. So I'm really appreciating you bringing this to the table.
Excellent. And I think Keenan had a question. I'm not sure if he's still there.
You're on mute, Keenan.
Yeah, you're on mute, Keenan. Go ahead.
Technology, man. Okay, so kind of go back to what we were saying about hockey. I don't necessarily think like it's on just the town to like change what's going on within the culture. It kind of has to start off with like the main professional league and them actually like putting a stance on like anti-racism and like diversity and inclusion. Because like there are players like Drew Doughty who shouldn't even be in the league because of the racist stuff that he did to a Black hockey player, which was like insane that he's still playing. And they haven't said anything about that. They didn't kneel during the national anthem when everybody was. They didn't stop the game when every other league stopped because of George Floyd. They were like, no, they still played. It was just, it goes down to like that league to set an example for the leagues below. Because when the leagues below see that, they're like, yeah, we're not going to get away with this anymore. There's no actual repercussions that happen to kids that are racist to other kids on the ice. Like there's nothing that will happen. It doesn't matter if the kid can be the greatest player in the world. They can be racist towards a player and nothing will happen to them. It doesn't even have to be a good player. It's just, I think there just needs to be actual like negative repercussions for the actions that they're doing that'll make people start to realize this isn't okay in the sport.
Thank you, Keenan. Harold, you had a question?
No, I was just going to say that Aaron, and we don't want like 6 people sending you separate emails. So we'll try to coordinate and have one person coordinate all our comments. And as a task force, we'll send you our comments and our recommendations later on. So we'll organize that offline and forward you something.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, May.
Just a quick little thing onto what Keenan said. It was excellent, Keenan. I think the NHL has to learn from basically, the NBA, because the Zaire jury, I mean, like, hello, you're somebody who set such an example to what sport should be and has taken, that whole racism factor right into everyone's faces by about how they showed themselves as far as even with the Black Lives Movement. So just a little comment. I think we need people like that prevalent to stand up at a higher rank as well, just as Keenan says, to make that statement and to show that this racism is not tolerated. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Again, what we are discussing is that the memorandum regarding cultural diversity in sport be received, and that the Anti-Black Racism and Anti-Racism Task Force comments regarding cultural diversity in sport be received and referred to staff for consideration and further action as appropriate. If there are no further comments, I'll call a vote. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Excellent, thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody, for your time tonight. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. May, your hand is raised.
Sorry, I'll get my hand off.
No worries. So now we move on to informational items, section 7.1, roundtable discussion regarding task force consultant. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion? Moved by Harold. Seconder, Keenan. That the round table discussion regarding task force consultant be received for information. Would staff like to speak on this item?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not at the moment. If there's any questions, I can certainly help answer them. I will say that Tasha is away this evening, couldn't be here. She's on vacation, so I will do my best to answer. I may have to discuss with her next week, but certainly happy to try and answer any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Does the committee have any questions or comments? Fiona?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So in that question about consultant, I feel one of the question, or I think the purpose I understand from that was some guidance with somebody that have the experience. I know that I understand recently that the town don't give funding to task force or to committees. So therefore, if I had known prior to now, then we could have engaged with other organization or other, even maybe people from the town staff who already have this experience, who can come in and help us to facilitate the strategies and the planning to move forward and getting our plan in place. And so that's where my question was. So I don't know, Mr. Clerk, if there was someone within the town, if we can't hire a consultant who has the anti-racism task force background, was there someone within the town who already has this training, or was there someone that the town used that provide that anti-racism training to the town staff that would be able to maybe meet with us and facilitate or give us some feedback on how we can effectively bring some strategy in place as we plan to get these duties and functions done?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not certain about a current staff member that has that sort of training and would be able to facilitate that sort of discussion. It's an interesting idea though, and something I'd be happy to bring up with Tasha and then see. That might be something we could do with present budgets available, and not have to go to council for any ask about that. So it is an interesting idea. I'll certainly listen to more of the discussion, but a facilitator to join a meeting in the fall, it seems like something we could do.
Mark, you.
Thank you. Sorry, I was muted. Are there any other questions or comments? May?
So Fiona, just so that I understand, so you looking for us to have someone that could guide us, or do we sit down and work together as a task force, putting an agenda of what we would like to see forward? Or is this facilitator coming in to tell us what we need to be doing as a task force? I'm just a little trying to figure out how we would use someone.
So like one person that I've been in touch with, I'm not sure who else know her. Her name is Rona Joala. I can't say her last name, but she's a diversity, equity, inclusive strategist. So sometimes it's yes, we are the one going to be sitting and putting these plans together, but having someone with the professional background, because I don't know who else have worked with on the task force of this before anti-racism, but from what I'm experiencing as a group, I see, obviously, I can speak for myself, that having that extra professional, eclectic experience will strengthen us building. And so as a result, even just to identify who we are, maybe is a good thing, because I feel like even looking at an article that was printed by the town, not by the town, by the media, it says the committee, but we're really a task force. So even if we have the town, this is where we were looking, even if we have a strategist to come in and say, okay, as a task force, here's the difference between us being a task force and a committee. Here's how, because I know one of the councilors said that as a task force, we basically giving advice and perspective. But according to the terms of reference, it says we're identifying and we're creating. So if we have someone like that, what happened is that while we're coming up with our feedbacks and from what we know, because we only can go with what we know, that person from that professional platform can say, you know what, that's great. Or no, this is how it would work best because of my experience. This is what we can do. So therefore, because right now, I think from the last email, we're like 65% in, but because our plan is still not created. So maybe that person will help us. And even if we can try to have that facilitated, well, I know we're going to be on summer break. The idea of this was if we have that person to help us to facilitate and have this put in place, then when we come back in September, we have a very strong focus of here is our mandate, here's what we're happening. So I'm not sure if I missed that, because I believe we would have already have a report before we end. So I'm not sure who normally provide that report because we're ending now. But things like that, if we have that person that's what I'm thinking, they would work with us, hear our ideas, and give us their professional expertise, advice, on how to make this successful.
So I think that's a great idea, but I think, as you said, maybe with summer break, what we need to do is we need to mandate a plan of what we would like to see going forward, just like with any other committee. I think we first have to strategize and see as a task force, what is it that we personally, each person on this task force would like to see going forward? And maybe we need to come up with a focused plan before we take it to the next level, because we need to be prepared to say, okay, and then if there is a person available to us, they can then say to us, okay, this works, this doesn't work, and this is why. So I think we as a group collectively need to maybe sit down and put stuff down on paper. What are your thoughts on that?
Is that for me?
Yeah, for anybody.
Any
So that is
additional
great,
comments? Sorry, go ahead.
That is great, mate, because obviously we're not going to someone empty-handed. You have a rough draft and a plan in mind. This is what we're looking. And even if we have nothing, we already have our terms of reference, and I'm looking at it today, and it's very succinct. So we have that. So, but you're right. You do some brainstorming and you're going with, here's what we're thinking. How can you guide us with this?
Terms of reference is the next item on up for discussion in this meeting. Do we want to move
Mark,
on to that?
I don't mean to interrupt you, but Nora's been putting her hand up and she hasn't.
Yep. My apologies. Nora, go ahead. I don't know why I missed that. Apologies.
No worries. I was just going to say, I agree. I think it would be best if we try to do, I guess, some internal work first to identify some of those priorities. And then once we're able to kind of come up with something there, then maybe we can reconvene and see if it would still be beneficial to engage someone with that professional background. But I think it would be useful maybe to kind of take a first try at it internally first.
Nor again, my apologies. I would recommend that we use the reactions within Zoom, so I can catch those hands up. I did see Harold's hand go up next. Sorry, go ahead, Harold.
Yeah, I find that in my 6.5 years now on council, I found that and it's a great suggestion, Fiona. And I was thinking long and hard about it since you brought it up a week or two ago. And one of the things that in council we try not to do, but we do anyway. We try to be very focused when we hire consultants, because I know in working in finance that what consultants provide us is data. And oftentimes, how kind of like banks use our money, all the money that you have in your checking account, they use our money to loan it out to other people for free. And they charge us 10, 20 bucks a month to keep our money. And so in the same vein, what consultants do is and from a municipal level, is they will have clients from Vancouver, Kamloops, Barrie, Ontario, London, Halifax, and Aurora. And they go out there and canvass everybody to do some work, and they collect their data. And it is that data that they sell, and it's their data that they're selling to all of us. So what I find that you can do the shortcut and actually contact those municipalities yourself and find out what they're doing. But the consultants, what they do is they do a great job of packaging the information and do the work for you and kind of present it to you. And that in itself is value, certainly. But the data we're the data. And in my work in diversity over the years, working in the background, is I've been collecting data and talking to people from Richmond Hill Council, their mayor, their staff, to Brampton, to Windsor, and I've been seeing what they're doing, and that's what I've been proposing and thinking and extrapolating. So I guess this is all to say is that consultants don't necessarily have more insight than us, but they have more data, and they're leveraging that data, which is all of us. So for them, if we hire a consultant, they're happy because now we get added to their data, and they get to repackage and sell it to another municipality. What I try to do is do consultants have inherently something that we cannot get ourselves? And that's what I think of when I, have to vote on money being expended on a consultant. I'm thinking I do have one or two people in mind. I'm not sure whether they would do it at a, for free or it's going to be hard. But let me think about that personally to see if I can get someone to speak to us. But essentially, what I'm getting from you, Fiona, is that you want to know what other people are doing in other municipalities are doing in terms of diversity and race relations. No,
that's not correct. And their organization that offer these services complimentary as well. And so that's why in the email I was saying, if anyone knows someone, otherwise I can reach out to people that I know. So this is not data. There are different kinds. I agree there are different kinds, but these are people that are spoken to. It's not about data. It's about making sure that especially as a new team, they help you to have a strong foundation so you can be successful, because this is a tough role to deal with. We know that. So it's not about getting someone to do the work for us. It came from the place where, like you said before, we're 65% in, and I don't know what the plan is, and I don't have the strategy. So I'm thinking that maybe that's happening because we need some guidance. I know I was speaking to one of members before who said, yes, maybe we can get someone else to come in. But so that's where we're getting it from. Getting someone to help us to get that strong foundation to move ahead with having a plan. Just what is the plan? Because if somebody asks me now, what is the plan? I don't have a plan. I don't have a mandate that can say, this is the plan that we're trying to start from our first meeting in November till now, this was the plan, or this is the plan after we come back from September, this was the plan that we have. So that's what I'm talking about. Just someone to give us that expert advice as we build. But if we already know, then I guess that would be the action plan to just put the plan in place. So it is there.
So if I can respond to that through you, Mark, is okay. So if it's about a plan, I think from our own shared experience or our own unique experiences, I think we probably have our own ideas as to what we want to do. We can idea generate offline, and we can think things through and plan it in detail over the summer. If we want to have someone who's kind of like a project manager who can help us coordinate all our plans, because you know what, Fiona, Mark, Nor, May, Keenan, through our own lives, that's why we're on this team, is to share and leverage our unique experiences, because no one knows more about what could or should be the next plan any more than us. And so I say that we can brainstorm, and I know we all have some good ideas, and if we need someone to help us coordinate, in terms of a project manager, as someone who knows planning from a municipal perspective, and getting booking places or getting logistics and stuff like that, we can probably leverage someone from the town, and I'll look into that, to kind of guide us in the next 12 months, so that once we itemize our task list, like let's say we'll prioritize 3 or 4 things. Maybe that's too ambitious, but we'll prioritize what we want to get done, and we'll try to get someone from the town to help project manage us, if that would be satisfactory to all of you.
If there are no further,
yeah.
If there are no further comments, we can call a vote. Are there any additional comments? Okay. So let's call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Did Fiona vote? I'm sorry if I missed you, Fiona. Okay, and Nor? Excellent. So the motion carries. And informational item 7.2 with regards to the terms of reference. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion? Mover and a seconder. Moved by Harold. Seconded by Nor. Uh, 7.2, that the roundtable discussion regarding the terms of reference be received for information. Would staff like to speak on this item?
Through you, Mr. Chair, nothing really to add on this one. I think I'll say that I could make, if there's some administrative fine wording adjustments to the terms, I think I can make those without going to council. If we're looking to change mandates, things like that, then I'd have to write a report to go to council.
Thank you. Does the committee have any questions or comments?
To you, Mr. Chair, can you clarify to me what you mean if we're looking to change the mandate? As in restriction on the terms of reference you're referring to?
The motion is for a roundtable discussion, regarding the terms of reference be received for information.
So Mark, if I can just add, so normally if someone, let's say from a council perspective, if someone puts forward a motion, we let them speak to that motion. And so since this item was posed by Fiona, so I would ask Fiona to introduce this item, and then we can have the discussion afterwards. And they'll give us more context. that's okay, Mark.
Thank you, Harold. Fiona?
When you say introduce it, what do you mean here, Councillor King?
Um,
As an open conversation
Harold's
about-
fine. No, because
As in the opening remarks?
yeah. So if you, so we have this item here, and we just want to know how we can comment. So if you want to introduce it and let us know your thoughts.
Okay, thank you for clarification. So it runs right into what we just left off. I identify from my observation and experience that some of the setback in having plans in place and a strategy to know what we're doing is the fact that maybe there was a misunderstanding, or maybe I had a different understanding of what the term of reference was calling for. So that's why I was looking, if I go back to the other sheet that was asking the task force versus the committee. So from the terms of reference, I was asking if it was too vague, and if that's why, if it's being too broad, because I know it was made very broad in the sense that it gives us flexibility. And I was questioning if that flexibility reduced the lack of focus in getting strategies in place and plan to bring things forward. But reading it from top to bottom, it's saying very succinct. So I wasn't sure what we were missing. And I wanted us to see, do we need to go over it? Because a part of the terms of reference, or part of the thing I was looking for on there, is even as the liaison, I wasn't sure. I know it says just to provide administrative support. So for example, I don't remember her name, the liaison for her team, Tasha? Sorry, Tasha.
Yes,
So,
Tasha.
correct. So I wasn't sure, like, the function of, it says to provide administrative support. So I wasn't, the liaison was supposed to interact with us, getting things sorted out if we're stuck, whether or not there was a deadline for certain, the communication piece that we were talking about before, when do we reply, when do we get started? So I was just opening this up on the floor for us to really look at the terms of reference and see, was there anything there that we needed to re-explain, go over, modify, so we can be more focused in getting the plan and the strategies in place.
Thank you. So Mark.
Sorry, go ahead, Harold.
Yeah, thank you, Fiona. So through you, then I'll ask our clerk, Michael. So based on what Fiona proposed, do you see anything in the terms of reference that we could add, or you would recommend? I'm not sure if we can change reference in the middle of our term, but is there something that you would suggest? Because this is the first advisory committee that has also a role of being a task force, where we do have action items. Are there certain terms of reference or guidelines that should be added to kind of help narrow our focus and guide us in terms of whether it be conduct or policies, or even a greater admin support from staff? Is there anything that you can think of or suggest?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Not exactly, Councillor. I think I think what Fiona said to me is, it hits the nail right in the head about it being when we did the terms of reference back last September, October. We're looking for something that was broad, and that so that any initiative, we didn't know what sort of initiatives were going to come forward, but anything might fit in. And I'd hate to have, or to in the future, a good idea, because but we can't do it because the terms of reference have been narrowed. So for me, I prefer a broad terms of reference, not for just this group, for all of the town's advisory committees, task force, boards, you name it. So like I said, I think I'm okay with these. I like the broadness of it, but certainly willing or happy to listen to the rest of the task force members.
Thank you. Fiona?
Thank you, Mr. Burke. So that's great. So, and like I said, it seemed very succinct. I just was trying to identify if there's something that was lacking or missing as to why it still prevents us from having the action plans in place to carry out the duties and function that it states there. So that was the clarity that I was looking for. So I appreciate that.
I think
Thank you.
Nora had her hand up.
Go ahead, Nora.
Let me just lower my hand first. Thank you. Thanks for that overview, Fiona. I think what came to mind as you were kind of summarizing the point was it might be more of a matter of us identifying if we feel that there's anything missing in the terms of reference as it stands right now. I know it's been a little while maybe since we reviewed it. I think personally, I don't have anything that I can think of off the top of my head that would need to be added or modified in my view. But I wonder if anyone on the team has any thoughts on that. You know, is there anything that we think needs to be added or clarified within the terms of reference as it stands? Is this something that we need to like review again and then come back at a later date if there are any suggestions?
Thank you, Nora May. Did you have a question, May?
No, I didn't, sorry.
My apologies. Mr. Clerk?
Hey, Mr. Chair, just on to build on Nora's point, I'd be happy to keep this as an open dialogue. You know, it's something we could discuss at meetings. I'm happy if anyone wants to email me, you know, something that isn't coming to you right now, but it comes to you tomorrow morning or whenever, let me know, and I'm certainly willing to listen to everything.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? If there are no further comments, I'll call the vote. All in favor? All opposed? That carries. There are no other items on the agenda. May I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Noor, seconded by Harold. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Task
Thanks,
force is
everyone.
adjourned. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just saying
Mr.
thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.